Warning, the following video contains scenes of illegal activity. Viewer discretion is advised. Look at me! I'm breaking the laws of physics! Ha ha ha! Hello and welcome to my corner of the internet. I don't know how you got here, but you're not leaving, not without a fight. And I don't punch, I bite. You guys ever heard the expression, strike when the iron's hot? Well, apparently I like to strike after the iron's taken a swim in the Arctic Ocean and dried off in a freezer. Remember when Squid Game took over the world a couple months ago? Well, I finally got around to watching it, and I decided to make a video about it after literally everyone else in the world already did that. Look, it's the boat of opportunity sailing away. Bye bye boat! But while watching Squid Game, I couldn't help but be reminded of another Netflix original show that kind of follows a similar story. And that show is called 3%, a Brazilian Netflix original which first aired in 2016. After I realized this, I went back and rewatched that show, and let me tell you, the similarities are very noticeable. I'm talking like Simpsons and Family Guy level of noticeable. Once I decided I wanted to make a video about this, I started doing some research and I had so much information that I realized it might just be easier for me to sit down with you guys and run you through the entire show, episode by episode, in what would essentially be an entire season 1 review. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Well then, that's it. And that's what I'm gonna do. And there's absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing in this world that's gonna stop me. Oh, well, I guess except for that. That's like YouTube kryptonite.
Rubik's Cube, over 3 billion combinations.
We start off the show by meeting our main character, Michelle, and her friend, Blue Shirt Girl. Don't bother learning her name because it's better not to get attached. In this world, there are 2 different islands. The inland, which is made up of the lower class members of society, and the offshore, which is basically heaven on earth. Every year, a bunch of 20-year-olds go to Mr. Clean's house and compete in what's called the process, in which only 3% of them earn the right to go to the offshore, where they'll never see any of their loved ones again. Yay? Now, the first episode of every show is always used to introduce the world and the characters, so unfortunately, I have to do the same. So let's do it really quickly. This is Fernando. He's in a wheelchair, and in case you forget that, the show will remind you 50 more times. This is Marco. Every member of his family already made it to the offshore, so this should be a cakewalk for him. Next, we have Joanna. She's a badass. Then there's Blue Shirt Guy. Don't bother learning his name because... And finally, Raphael. And spoiler alert, he's my favorite character, and every time he appears on screen, I squeal and pee a little. Oh yeah, and this is Ezekiel. He's the bad guy. And you could tell he's the bad guy because he's going bald. Alright, now that that's taken care of, let's move on to the rest of this episode. The contestants go into this interview room where they'll be interviewed.
I'm shocked.
And of course, our cast of main characters will make it, and even Blue Shirt Guy gets his time to shine. Oh, and there's also this side plot where this lady Eleni tries to expose Ezekiel, but it goes nowhere, so... Moving on! We next see our gang of characters in the cube room where they have to build as many cubes as possible with the minimum to move forward being 9. Michelle notices that Fernando is struggling and pushes the pieces towards him because he's in a wheelchair 49 more times to go. As you can see, the show kinda follows a similar format to Squid Game, except in this one you don't die when you get eliminated. Or at least you're not supposed to. Clearly, Blue Shirt Guy did not get the memo. And speaking of blue shirts... Now you get why I didn't name her? It seems like in this universe, wearing a blue shirt is a guaranteed way to die.
Come on, come on!
Now the reason she got shot is because the process runners thought she was a part of the Resistance, which is this group that tries to take down the offshore, believing that it's classist and unfair. But it turns out that Michelle is a part of the Resistance, and she tricked Blue Shirt Girl into getting shot, thus taking the heat off her. Knowing that she got her lifelong friend killed clearly takes a toll on Michelle, but I just don't buy it. It's the first episode, alright? We barely got to see the relationship, and now I'm supposed to believe that this is something that's going to haunt Michelle for the rest of the show. Wouldn't it have made more sense to keep the character alive, let them go through the struggles of the process together, and then halfway through, that's when she gets the luxury of dying? That way the audience develops an actual interest in the relationship instead of it being a cheap excuse for character development. Because all this really does is make me hate the main character even more. This whole scene just feels so cold. Like there's no hesitation at all from Michelle, and that's probably why I just don't feel any sympathy or connection to her at all. This scene right here ruined Michelle's character arc for the whole season because I just don't care about her. And there's still 7 more episodes to go. Now that you guys know what's going on, I'm not going to go into as much detail for the rest of the episodes, mainly because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long, and also because I like my hands like I like my legs, without carpal tunnel. Get it? Because carp's a fish? Don't make me get the insecticide. That's better. Biologically impossible, but progress is progress. The contestants go through medical screenings where we find out that Raphael's identity is fake. Even though identity theft is a horrible crime, I think I can look past it for you, Raphael. You could kill your best friend, Raphael, and I still wouldn't look the other way. You know why? Because I love you. Okay, I know we're only 2 episodes in. I know it's a little too soon, but I love you. You don't have to say it back. It's okay. I know how you feel. What were we talking about again? But luckily he still passes anyways. In fact, everyone passes except for Fernando because he's in a wheelchair. 48 left to go for those of you playing along at home. They then end up in an escape room where they have to unravel a fake crime scene. They spend about 10 minutes looking around and sharing ideas until Fernando comes up with a pretty good explanation, only for Raphael to pipe in at the last minute and explain why he's wrong and gives his account for what actually happens. As if he's just been keeping this information to himself this entire time. Why does he do this, you might ask?
Because the show has to fill its runtime. Oh, you mean like in the context of the universe? He's a dick? I don't know.
Raphael ends up being right, and Fernando looks like garbage, but don't worry, Fernando, you might have lost your dignity, but you gained a friend in Michelle. And Michelle's friendship always ends well. There's also more happening with Ezekiel and Alini, but again, it's just so boring. You just end up asking yourself, is this the episode Alini finds out what's going on? No? Okay, next time I want to waste 20 minutes of my life, I'll give you a call. Next, they end up in a locked room with 8 people and 7 coins, and they have to decide who gets to stay in the process and who gets eliminated. There's a lot of bickering and arguing, but they just end up basically pulling straws, so again, what was the point? In fact, that's what I'm going to rename this episode to. Episode 2, what was the point? Oh, also, Joanna pulls the shortest piece of cloth, so she gets eliminated. But uh-oh, she stole a coin at the very beginning. And here I was thinking we were going to have to go the rest of the show following Mustache Man. I'll tell ya, this is just full of surprises. The contestants have to go through a hallway that's filled with gas that makes them hallucinate their insecurities. We get to learn a bit more backstory in this episode, mainly about Joanna, and we learn that she killed the kid of a notorious gang leader back home. And so I guess the process is her way of fleeing all that, right? And if that's the case, why did she act like she didn't care to be a part of it in the first place? If you knew failing was a death sentence, surely you wouldn't be so nonchalant about staying, right? I don't know. It just kind of feels like this motivation doesn't match the character we've come to know up to this point. We also see that Michelle wants to kill Ezekiel, which would bring her body count to 2. They all end up eventually making it and move into a storage unit. No, literally, it's a storage unit, like they're not even trying to hide it. I guess I should mention Ezekiel. Well, he smuggled in a kid. No one tell Joanna. And it seems like he has some type of relationship with him. No one tell Chris. This is also the episode where Michelle and Fernando become a thing. So if things go well with Ezekiel, that'll bring her body count to 3. I remember the first time I watched this episode and just being so surprised when it happened, because there was literally no build up to it. Like, at all. We see them have a few conversations, but there's no hints at a romantic interest. It literally just comes out of nowhere. Let's hope that's not something Fernando does, or that'll be the 3rd kid mentioned in one episode. Get a couple more of those and Joanna could be Darth Vader. The rest of the episode is just a build up to the next one, so next!
Hello, I'm Bill Gates, chairman of Microsoft.
This is easily the best episode of the entire season, by far. They're still stuck in the storage unit, and the only way to get food and water is by pulling these levers in a certain pattern that changes every hour or so, until they just eventually drop a load of supplies, basically telling them to fend for themselves. They ration it all out equally, but Marco decides it's time to escape, so he gets a group of the strongest guys together, and they do just that. Once their escape plan fails, they go to plan B. Violence.
And so the moral of the story is, if at first you don't succeed, start stabbing.
This is definitely the episode with the most violence. I mean, Marco literally kills a girl for not saying sorry to him. So make sure you learn your manners, kids, because it could literally save your life. The ending's also pretty good. I just wish we could have learned a bit more about Marco before he got eliminated. All in all, a really decent episode. Hopefully they can keep it up. Let's hope that's something Fernando can do, am I right? Also, spoiler alert, they don't. At least the show does, and I don't know about Fernando, alright? PG-13, people. Keep your pants on, people. PG-13. This is basically just a filler episode explaining the backstory of Ezekiel. His wife used to work on the process with him, but she eventually drowns herself in the ocean after realizing she'll never get to see her kid that she left behind when she made it to the offshore. This is the same kid that Ezekiel was talking to a couple episodes ago, so I guess it's good to finally have an explanation for that. But it didn't really need a whole episode though. Did it? No. That's the answer to that question. Alright, multiple choice. A, yes, B, no, C, maybe. The answer is D. God, no. They could have just easily done a 10-minute flashback segment and been done with it. But no, we just had to see 5 minutes of blind wine tasting and speech writing. Well, I guess now we know why Ezekiel drowns himself every day. Oh, wait, did I forget to mention that? Yeah, he wakes up every morning and drowns himself in the sink. I guess so that way him and his wife have something in common? Look, this episode just sucks, okay? Let's move on. All the contestants get locked in a room with a member of their family and a giant jar of money. They can choose to stay in the process and risk walking away with nothing, or they can leave now with enough money to help their family have a better life. I really enjoy this idea on paper, but the execution just isn't really great. Michelle doesn't have any family, so no one shows up. Just another reason she's a boring main character. She can't even participate in the emotional manipulation. I really enjoy Fernando and Rafael in this episode. Fernando's dad threatens him to stay, and Fernando's mom threatens him to leave. They both end up staying, with Raphael's mom basically telling him he's disowned. Well, that's gonna make for some awkward family reunion. Oh, and then an assassin posing as Joanna's dad shows up, being all like, "We're either walking out of here with this money, or I'm walking out of here with your decapitated head." And Joanna's all like, "You're not my dad!" It turns out it was all just a test by Ezekiel to see if Joanna truly wanted to go to the offshore, or if she was just trying to run away from her problem. Overall, a pretty good episode, even though the only person who accepted the offer was no-name number 45.
She was my favorite!
The show has definitely gotten a lot more interesting throughout the season. It's just unfortunate that the criticism I had at the beginning is still present. The main character is as interesting as watching paint dry on a piece of cardboard that's used to measure how tall grass grows. And the side plot with Ezekiel still hasn't evolved to anything even remotely interesting, but there's still 2 episodes left, so let's see if they can finally turn that around. They didn't. It seems like the process is over after only like 4 episodes and 5 tests, and now the 3% have been found. They party and celebrate, but Michelle has the genius idea to try and poison Ezekiel's drink. Let's just add stupid to that ever-growing list of character flaws. Why not just wait? You made it to the offshore. Why not wait to kill him when you get there, or even rise through the ranks and do it when he least suspects it? Boy, I tell ya, these irrational, spur-of-the-moment assassins do not think things through. She ends up killing someone else, and we have to spend yet another entire episode sitting through candidates getting interviewed. I'm not even joking. The whole point of the episode is to test Fernando's loyalty to Michelle, to see if he'll snitch on her, which he obviously doesn't. If it wasn't for water, this would be the worst episode of the season. So congratulations, Capsule, you're not the worst. That's not me clapping, by the way. I'm looking at a picture of Raphael. This is it, the home stretch. Let's end it with a bang. The contestants prepare to be inducted into the offshore society, but Ezekiel finds out that Michelle was the one who tried to kill him. She gets pulled in for some torture, also known as kinky interviewing. Fernando is told that she's been eliminated. He then decides to eliminate himself because he'd rather be with Michelle than go to the offshore, proving that that loose screw came from his head and not his chair 47 more times to go. Ezekiel calls Joanna into this janitor's closet and tells her that she needs to kill the gangster who threatened her life in order to go to the offshore. She refuses and gets eliminated. So it seems like out of all our main characters, Raphael is the only one going to the offshore. But in order to go to the offshore, you have to get this injection that prevents you from having kids. Everyone seems to be very reluctant to go, except this guy who's thinking about all the sex he can have without a condom.
I never wanted kids anyway. Fuck that. We can have all the sex we want.
You see, Fernando? This is why you should have waited. Eventually, everyone goes through with it, and even Michelle gets to go after she rats out the secret hiding place for the resistance to Ezekiel, who turns out also used to be a member? Dun dun dum. I also forgot to mention that Michelle wanted to kill Ezekiel because she thought he killed her brother, but turns out her brother's still alive, so that's why she turned on the resistance. They all end up on this Star Wars looking ship and sail away to the offshore, leaving what this glorious paradise might look like up to the imagination of the viewer, never to be seen ever. And I mean ever. Oh, and Alini's in handcuffs, about to go get a lobotomy. Fun! The only way to make her storyline interesting at this point would be if she had to go get a vasectomy. I think my main point in making this video is to show just how random it is for a show to become a hit. 3% and Squid Game follow a relatively similar story and even a very similar character. The badass who isn't affected by what's going on around them, the pretentious brute who ends up forming a gang to kill people, the one that should have no chance of making it but somehow ends up going far. Honestly, the only thing these two shows really actually differ on is stakes. Let's look at the first obstacle in each of these shows. In Squid Game, they play red light, green light, and this is where we see the first elimination, who gets shot dead, perfectly laying out the rules of this world. If you get eliminated, that's it. You die. There are no second chances. All these side characters you get introduced to, you know are gonna die at some point, you just don't know when or how. I remember watching it for the first time and hoping that there was gonna be some potential outcome or plot twist where the whole group can survive, and the side plot of that show worked perfectly towards leaving you to believe that this could actually happen. Now let's look at 3%. The first obstacle is an interview, and if you fail, you just get sent back home. The only real jeopardy is that if you fail, you don't get to live a life without struggles, which is a life the characters never experienced before, so now they just have to basically go back to the lives they had before. I think that's why I never really got invested in this show. If nothing of much meaning can actually happen to these characters, then why should I care? Also, not to mention, we don't really get to see what life is like on the inland, so we have very limited idea as to what exactly they're going back to. We do get a couple scenes here and there, but we never get that world building insight to really show why we should care. I think it would have been cool if instead of the side plot with Eleni, maybe they did a side plot with somebody on the inland. That way we can get both perspectives and still keep track of some of these characters who do get eliminated. Maybe even giving these smaller supporting characters a little bit of a bigger role once they get to the offshore. Let us see what effect not passing the process has on people. We never get to see how characters cope with it on the outside. I think that's one of the biggest issues the show has. For anyone trying to write the next hit TV show, learn from 3%'s mistakes. You can have the potatoes and veggies, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't have those nice and juicy steaks.
And so the moral of the story is, whether you're running away from a life of paradise to go get a lap dance from a soggy piece of bread, or your life's in danger because of your fashion choices, I colored it! Remember, today's tears are tomorrow's punchlines. See ya! No, but seriously, you know how expensive bullet holes are to repair? God, I'm not made of money, people. This video is probably getting demonetized, so how will you expect me to fix this?